Still got game or just a name? Does Justin Fields find a landing spot?
It looked like Fields was guaranteed to be a starter, Stormy, and now it looks like he's going to, at best, be competing to start in the NFL.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Stormy Buonantony, on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
There's still a number of guys out there that we have not heard much information about and where a potential landing spot might be. So we're going to play something here called Still Got Game or Just a Name, Mike. So looking at some of these remaining free agent players and figuring out if they are what the market is, if they're worth still paying guys for. And we're going to start at one guy who's the biggest unknown right now, and Justin Fields, after he was considered this belle of the ball, minus 425 favorite to go to Atlanta. Well, obviously we know Kirk Cousins goes there. People were talking about giving up a first-round pick for Justin Fields. What's the compensation going to be now with things closing in? Still got game or just a name? Does Justin Fields find a landing spot?
I mean, he's still got game. He played well in the second half of the season last year. I'm not a big Justin Fields fan. He struggles throwing the football, and that's a problem when you're a quarterback. But it really feels like the Bears overplayed their hand here. They clearly were asking too much early on in this process, and now they're kind of behind the eight ball because you're like, okay, well, the Vikings have a quarterback, and the Falcons have a quarterback, and the Bucks got their quarterback, and you got Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh. So the landing spots have really shrunk here for Justin Fields. It feels like he probably is not starting next year in the NFL. Maybe he competes for a starting job somewhere. I still think Seattle might be a little bit of a dark horse. Geno Smith, 1 year left on that contract. Maybe you take a flyer here with Justin Fields and see what you got. I know Michael mentioned the Eagles as a possible landing spot, playing backup there to Hurts, but it looked like Fields was guaranteed to be a starter, Stormy, and now it looks like he's going to, at best, be competing to start in the NFL.
Yeah, in the game of quarterback musical chairs, the music has stopped, and he's the one just kind of standing there awkwardly figuring out what to do. And even, by the way, another quarterback update we got this morning, Jameis Winston is going to be the backup to Deshaun Watson in Cleveland. So even backup roles getting swooped up across the league right now. I thought the Raiders would have made sense, but then they signed Gardner Minshew, and it seems like that's out the window as well. I'll be very curious to see ultimately what happens with him. I do like conceptually the idea of what you referenced with Michael saying the Eagles, because his body type, his skill set makes a lot of sense if for whatever reason a guy like Jalen Hurts were to go down. But, you know, his career, 10 wins, hasn't really garnered what, you know, the place that he was drafted might anticipate. How about Calvin Ridley? Michael said yesterday, too, that the Gabe Davis signing at that number still would make Ridley a possibility for him to return in Jacksonville. Still got game or just a name? What do you think about Calvin Ridley?
I think Calvin Ridley still has game. This is the wide receiver I'd be targeting if I wanted to upgrade my passing game right now. He's someone who we saw miss because of a gambling suspension. Came back last year. I thought he played well in stretches, but that Jacksonville offense was clunky at times. And I don't think that was Ridley's fault. He's still doing a good job being able to get open. Lawrence missed him a few times, and the play calling wasn't phenomenal. They really wanted to run the football, and that wasn't having much success, so wasn't able to set up the passing game. You saw different pieces of that offense in and out with injury as well. So I think there's upside to Ridley here in his second full season back. If I'm someone who needs a wide receiver, Ridley's someone that I'm looking to target if I can add him.
He had 76 catches, 1,016 yards, 8 touchdowns last year. Let's keep it in the wide receiver market. OBJ, still got game or just a name?
Man, for what he's like, 15 million is what we're hearing. That to me is just a name at that price. It feels like you could spend that money more wisely in other spots. Beckham, we saw last year in and out of the lineup for a Baltimore team that he really fit exceptionally well on. That was the kind of team that he needed to be on. Now, if he ends up on the Chiefs on a cheap deal, something like that, he could still have a very good season. It just feels like the suitors that he needs to find, they're very specific. It's not just any offense you can plug and play Beckham in at this point in his career.
Still explosive, draws PI calls as well as anyone, but I think certainly not good enough for the dollar amount that he's trying to command or that he has commanded in recent history. It's not for me. Plus he's getting more talk right now about being at the Oscars after party with Kim Kardashian than talking about football right now. So let's move on from that. Stephon Gilmore. Will the Cowboys bring him back? Played well in 2023, 68 tackles, 13 passes defended, 2 picks, only allowed 4 passing touchdowns, and a 60.3 passer rating when targeting. He is 33 years old, though. Still got game or just a name?
He's still got game. People have to remember the situation he was supposed to be put in was as the number 2 cornerback down there in Dallas. Diggs was supposed to be the number 1 cornerback. he tears his Achilles, and all of a sudden Gilmore gets elevated and has to take on the number one role down there and did it very, very well, even at the age of 33. So Gilmore, one of those guys where, hey, Miami, pick up the phone, give him a call. Go ahead, add him as a second cornerback. Like, he's one of those people that I think is still very valuable in this league, especially as just a very talented, wise, smart cornerback is something that you want to have on your roster at this point in the NFL.
Yeah, I just wonder how much they're willing to spend on their third corner at this point, right? But I agree. I love Stephon Gilmore, 33 years old. He keeps kicking. He's still got gas in the tank. Somebody who is still young, youthful, exuberant, but has question marks about them is Chase Young, coming over from the San Francisco 49ers after he got moved midseason from the Washington Commanders. San Francisco does look like they've moved on, signing Leonard Floyd. Still got game or just a name, Chase Young?
A little bit of both, but I'm going to go with more just a name considering the tag that he's going to ask for here. The price tag is just going to be too high. Like, he should have flourished in San Francisco. That was the best possible situation for him. And he took games off, let alone plays off. He took full games off, it felt like, in San Francisco. I don't really want anyone who's taken full games off, let alone plays off, who plays defensive end and needs to be one of the better pass rushers in the NFL. I mean, so much hype around him coming out of Ohio State, drafted 2 overall, never lived up to it. And I don't really feel like I want to be the one who is going to invest and assume that he's going to mature at the right time and play hard every play. So just a name to me here.
I know he did get a little bit of a chip on his shoulder and showed up specifically in that first half of the Super Bowl against the Chiefs after he was getting dogged publicly bad for the lack of effort against Detroit.
If you have to get bashed because of your NFC title performance, so you show up for half of the Super Bowl, like that's not great. What are you doing in week 4?
You're not wrong. On PFF, ranked number 24 of 43 qualified edge rushers in pass rush productivity while with San Francisco. How about linebacker Lavonte David entering year number 13 in the league, 34 years old, just a name or still got game?
At this point, he's just a name to me here. It's clearly the twilight of the career. He played well last year, but like linebacker, not exactly the most important position on the NFL football field at this point, and he's not great in coverage. And when you combine those two things, tough person to want to add to your team.
Still smart, instinctive, but as you mentioned, slipped from his peak. Jadeveon Clowney. Okay, so he says he'd love to return to Baltimore, finish second on the team with 9.5 sacks. They're reportedly interested in bringing him back, but he's angling for a much bigger payday than the $2.5 million he signed for last fall. Still got game, just a name. Does he go back to Baltimore?
Still got game. I'll be interested to see what happens here because he proved last year he can still rush the passer. And look, 9.5 sacks is no joke in the NFL. If you can go out and get 9.5 sacks and you're paid sub $3 million, that is a very valuable person to have on the team. The contract is going to be the big question here with Clowney because one of those guys where I'm not running to pay him $10 million a year, right? Because I don't know, is he going to be able to replicate that production? Was it the system? Was it the situation? Or is it someone who, it still has something left in the tank? And is he an every down guy? Probably not. He's just a third down pass rushing type of end. So it depends on the price, but there's clearly something left in the tank when you're getting close to 10 sacks in an NFL season.
Yep, 9.5 sacks, 43 tackles, 9 for loss, and 19 QB hits, as well as 5 passes defended and 2 forced fumbles. Let's go back to linebacker position. Bobby Wagner played all 17 games this past season. He'd like to play a 13th season, and I'm sure would love to wrap up his career staying in Seattle. But with Pete Carroll out as head coach, that feels unlikely. Still got game, just a name.
He's still got game if you're running the football against him. He's just a name in pretty much every other situation. Really good run stopper, not great against the pass. I mean, if you need a veteran leader on defense, I think it makes sense. But again, it's not someone I'm rushing to the window to try and sign here.
Let's hit one more quickly. Stick with Seattle. Jamal Adams, when healthy, he's still a playmaker, but torn quad in 2022 that lingered into last year might be concerning. 28 years old. Still got game or just a name?
He hasn't had a game for 5 seasons, Stormy. Like, ever since he got traded from the Jets, he hasn't been great. And he wasn't great in pass coverage. He is really a linebacker playing safety in a lot of ways. A good run stopper. He can blitz the quarterback. But he's a mess when they actually drop back and throw the football against him. I don't want any piece of Jamal Adams at any price at this point in his career, especially with the way that the NFL has evolved into a passing league here. He'd be better off if we were playing 90s football right now.
Ooh.